The wedding hall smelled of lilacs and lies. Marcus Chen stood at the altar in his father's too-tight suit, rehearsing his vows to a woman he'd never met, when the doors opened and destroyed every careful plan he'd built around his predictable, safe future. He'd expected plain. He'd requested plain. The matchmaker had promised him someone suitable, a word that meant ordinary enough not to threaten the careful walls he'd built around his heart after Rachel left. Someone who needed a green card more than romance. Someone who wouldn't ask questions about why a successful architect in his 30s would arrange a marriage like ordering furniture from a catalog. But the woman walking toward him was not plain. She moved like water finding its path, her presence filling the small chapel with something that made his chest constrict. Dark hair fell past her shoulders in waves that caught the afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows. Her dress, simple white cotton, probably borrowed, somehow made her look more regal than any designer gown could manage. But it was her eyes that made Marcus forget to breathe. They were the color of aged whiskey, and they saw straight through every defense he'd spent 5 years constructing. This was wrong. This wasn't the arrangement. The matchmaker had shown him a blurry photo of a timid-looking woman named Anya Volkov, someone who'd fled domestic violence in Moscow, someone desperate enough to accept a loveless marriage for papers. Someone safe. This woman was not safe. "You must be Marcus," she said, and her voice carried the slight musicality of her native Russian, each syllable precisely placed like notes in a composition. She extended her hand, and he noticed the calluses on her fingers, the chipped nail polish, the slight tremor she was trying to hide. "I am Anya. Thank you for this arrangement." Her hand was cold in his. Up close, he could see the purple shadows under her eyes, the too sharp angle of her cheekbones that spoke of missed meals. There was a small scar above her left eyebrow, nearly hidden by her hair. Evidence of the violence she'd escaped, probably. She was terrified. He could see it in the rigid set of her shoulders, the way she held herself like something that expected to be struck. And that terror made her even more dangerous to him, because it triggered every protective instinct he'd sworn to bury with Rachel's memory. "Should we begin?" The officiant, a bored city clerk who performed a dozen marriages every Friday, looked at his watch. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. This was just a transaction. Papers in exchange for a temporary performance. 2 years of cohabitation to satisfy immigration requirements, then an amicable divorce. He'd give her enough money to start over. She'd disappear from his life. Simple. Except nothing about Anya Volkov was simple. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. Marcus heard himself speak the words, felt himself slide a simple gold band onto her finger. Her hands were so small, and then it was done. The clerk pronounced them married with all the enthusiasm of someone announcing a dentist appointment. Anya's hand in his was still trembling. "We should go," Marcus said, his first words to his wife beyond the scripted vows. "I'll show you the apartment." The drive to his Nob Hill apartment was silent. Anya sat with her single battered suitcase on her lap, staring out at San Francisco's steep streets with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Wonder, fear, regret. He gripped the steering wheel tighter and focused on traffic. His apartment was minimalist. All clean lines and neutral colors, more like a hotel than a home. Rachel had called it sterile once, during one of their fights. "You live like you're always ready to leave," she'd said. "Like you're afraid to take up space in your own life." She hadn't been wrong. "The guest room is down the hall," Marcus said, setting down Anya's suitcase. "Bathroom's the second door. Kitchen is, well, I don't cook much, but help yourself to whatever. I usually work late, so you'll have privacy. The marriage certificate and your documentation should be ready in a few weeks. My lawyer will handle everything." Anya turned slowly, taking in the expensive emptiness of his life. "It is very clean," she said finally. "I have a cleaning service." "Yes, I imagine you do." Something flickered in her eyes, amusement. Pity. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. "It is beautiful view. Like painting. You can see Alcatraz from the bedroom," Marcus offered awkwardly. "The guest bedroom. The prison." She smiled, and it transformed her face, making her luminous. "Is joke, yes. Freedom papers and view of prison." Very American irony. Despite himself, Marcus almost smiled back. "I never thought about it that way. Perhaps you do not think about prisons much. This is privilege, I think." She said it without accusation, just observation, but it stung anyway. Your room has a lock, Marcus said stiffly. You can use it whenever you want. I won't bother you. This is just an arrangement. Yes, arrangement. Anya turned back to the window. Thank you for this arrangement, Marcus Chen. You are very kind man, I think, to help stranger this way. Kind. The word sat wrong in his chest. He wasn't kind. He was a coward, buying companionship without risk, helping someone because it cost him nothing but money and a performance for the government. Real kindness required vulnerability, and he'd sworn off that years ago. I'll let you settle in, he said, retreating to his home office. But settling in wasn't what Anya did. Over the next days, Marcus watched his sterile apartment transform. She didn't change anything dramatically, just small touches that felt like acts of quiet rebellion against his carefully controlled emptiness. A vase of grocery store flowers on the kitchen counter. The scent of real coffee in the morning instead of his usual instant. Books from the library stacked on the coffee table, poetry in Russian and English, art history, a worn copy of Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. She moved through his space like a ghost at first, appearing in the kitchen when he left for work, vanishing into her room before he returned. But gradually, inevitably, their orbits intersected. He found her one evening on the apartment's small balcony, sketching in a battered notebook. The sunset painted the bay in colors that didn't exist in his architectural renderings, wild oranges and impossible purples. You're an artist, Marcus said, and she jumped, nearly dropping her pencil. No, I draw, but not artist. In Moscow, I teach children. Art, music. Before, she trailed off, and he saw her fingers move unconsciously to the scar above her eyebrow. You don't have to talk about it. I know. She turned back to her sketch. The bay, the bridges, the city sprawling up hills like it was trying to reach heaven. But perhaps someday I will want to. Is strange thing about trauma, yes. It wants to be told, even when telling is hard. Marcus found himself sitting down beside her, something he hadn't planned. What will you do, after you get your papers? Live, Anya said simply. Perhaps teach again, perhaps draw. Perhaps find way to help other women like me, the ones still trapped. She glanced at him sideways. What will you do? What I always do. Work. Design buildings. You design buildings but you do not live in yours, she observed. This beautiful apartment, it is like museum. Everything perfect, nothing touched. That's not true. I live here. No, Marcus Chen, you hide here. Is different thing. She said it gently, but it landed like a punch. He should have walked away. Should have reminded her this was temporary, that her opinions about his life were neither requested nor relevant. Instead, he heard himself say, her name was Rachel. Anya waited, not pushing, and somehow that made it easier to continue. We were engaged. I was going to design our house. I had all these plans. Glass walls, open spaces, built for a family. She got sick. Cancer. I spent 2 years watching her disappear, piece by piece. She died 3 weeks before our wedding. The words came out flat, rehearsed from years of therapy. After that, I couldn't design anything with warmth in it. Couldn't imagine filling spaces with life when life just leaves. So you make arrangement with stranger, Anya said softly. Safe marriage. No love means no loss. Yes, but I think you forget something, Marcus Chen. She turned to face him fully, and those whiskey-colored eyes held something that terrified him more than grief ever had. Love is not arrangement we make. Love is thing that happens when we stop hiding. He wanted to argue, wanted to retreat behind his walls. But sitting there in the cooling evening air, watching this woman who'd survived horrors he couldn't imagine speak about love with such certainty, Marcus felt something crack in his chest. The weeks that followed were a study in incremental surrender. Anya began cooking. Simple Russian meals that filled the apartment with scents of dill and garlic and paprika. At first Marcus ate in his office, but gradually he found himself at the table, listening to her stories about her students in Moscow, her grandmother's village, the books she loved. She listened to his stories too, asked questions about his designs, somehow seeing the emotion he tried to hide in clean lines and calculated angles. This building, she said once, studying his plans for a community center, it wants to protect people. See, the way you make entrance, like arms opening. You design with love, even when you pretend you do not feel. One Saturday, Marcus came home to find Anya crying at the kitchen table, a letter from Immigration Services crumpled in her fist. Her asylum claim had been denied. Without the marriage, she'd be deported within weeks, likely back to the man who'd nearly killed her. I am sorry, she whispered. I know this complicates arrangement. I understand if you want. No, the word came out fierce. Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. We're going to fix this. My lawyer is good. We'll appeal. We'll provide more documentation. He stopped, seeing his own reflection in her tears. When had her problems become his? When had her pain started feeling like his own? That night, Marcus lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. Down the hall, he could hear Anya crying, trying to muffle the sound. Every protective instinct screamed at him to go to her, to offer comfort, to promise safety. But that would mean admitting what terrified him most. That somewhere between the wedding and now, between the flowers on the counter and the shared meals and the sketches of his city through her eyes, the arrangement had become real. He was falling in love with his wife. And love meant vulnerability. Love meant risk. Love meant the possibility of loss, and he'd sworn never to survive that again. But in the morning, when Anya emerged from her room with red-rimmed eyes and attempted a brave smile, Marcus found himself saying, I'm taking the day off. Let's go somewhere. They drove to Point Reyes, hiked to a beach where elephant seals basked on rocks and the Pacific stretched endless and wild. Anya stood at the water's edge, wind whipping her hair, and slowly spread her arms like she was embracing the horizon. In Russia, I dream about ocean, she said when Marcus joined her. I dream about space so big nobody can trap you in it. You're going to stay, Marcus promised. We'll fight this, together. Why? She turned to him, and he saw she already knew the answer. Arrangement is over if I am deported. You fulfill your part. You owe me nothing more. Maybe I owe myself something more. The words felt like stepping off a cliff. Maybe I'm tired of hiding. Maybe I want this marriage to be real. Anya's eyes widened. Marcus, you do not have to. I'm not saying this for you, he interrupted. I'm saying it for me. Because somewhere between viewing you as a transaction and now, I started viewing you as home. And I'm terrified, Anya. I'm so damn terrified of losing someone again that I can barely breathe thinking about it. But I'm more terrified of never having tried. She reached up, her calloused fingers gentle against his face. You think love is thing that hurts you. But love is also thing that heals. My grandmother, she say, heart that never breaks is heart that never opens. You have been closed so long, Marcus Chen. I know. He covered her hand with his. But I think you've been opening me. Carefully. Like you knew I was afraid. I know afraid, Anya whispered. I am afraid every day. Afraid of going back. Afraid of staying. Afraid of hoping for real life. But then I think, what is point of surviving if I do not learn to live? They stood there while the waves crashed and the seals called. Two broken people who'd accidentally found each other while trying to avoid exactly this. Finally, Marcus leaned down and kissed her, tasting salt and tears and something that felt impossibly like future. We'll fight this together, he murmured against her lips. Real marriage, real life, no more arrangements. Anya smiled through her tears. You say this like a simple thing. It's not simple, it's terrifying. But I think, he pulled back to look at her. This woman who'd walked into his careful emptiness and filled it with color and warmth and stubborn, beautiful hope. I think you're worth being terrified for. They did fight. Marcus's lawyer worked magic, building a case that their marriage, though it began as arrangement, had evolved into genuine partnership. Friends gave statements. Photos documented their life together. The immigration hearing was brutal. Questions designed to trap them, to expose fraud. But when the judge asked Marcus why he'd married Anya, he answered with devastating honesty. I married her because I was afraid. Afraid of living, of feeling, of risking my heart again. I thought I could control it, keep it safe and temporary. But Anya didn't let me hide. She filled my empty apartment with life. She looked at my designs and saw the love I tried to bury. She survived horrors I can't imagine and still believed in hope. She taught me that being afraid of loss isn't the same as being smart about it, it's just another kind of prison. I married her as an arrangement, Your Honor. But I'm staying married to her because she made me remember how to be human. The judge granted Anya's petition. Outside the courthouse, they stood on the steps in the San Francisco sunshine, Anya clutching her approval notice with shaking hands. People streamed past them, everyone rushing somewhere important, and Marcus Chen held his wife and thought about all the buildings he'd designed to keep people safely separate, climate-controlled, protected from weather and chance and chaos. What a waste. What a beautiful, necessary waste. Take me home, Anya said, and he knew she meant the apartment they'd transformed together, the space that was no longer sterile but lived in. Full of her sketches and his blueprints, her Russian poetry and his architecture books, their shared dinners and morning coffee rituals and all the small, brave acts of building a life. We're already home, Marcus whispered. We've been home since you walked through those wedding doors and scared the hell out of me. Anya laughed, that luminous smile breaking across her face like sunrise. Good. Fear is how we know we are alive, yes. Fear means we have something worth losing. Then I'm terrified, Marcus admitted. Every single day. Good, she said again, and kissed him there on the courthouse steps while the city rushed around them. Two people who'd learned that sometimes the greatest courage isn't avoiding pain. It's choosing to love anyway, arrangement or not, scared or not, broken or not. Choosing each other, deliberately, daily, defiantly. Choosing to live like they meant it.